This was the largest recorded earthquake in the history of the southeastern United States. And that is just fine, seeing as how this area historically leads the field in frequency of deadly hurricanes. They don't need earthquakes on top of everything else. Hi, I'm Chris May, writer, producer, and host of This Day in Weather History, now in its second year from the Weather Network in Canada. This earthquake near Charleston, South Carolina, severely damaged or destroyed hundreds of buildings and sadly killed more than 100 people. On this day in weather history, earthquakes are sudden, shocking, and at least on the surface, take everyone by surprise. Life is busy, and most of us are not seismologists, so we have no clue what to recognize as a tell that there might be subterranean tectonic slippage or movement of any kind. This would have been particularly harsh for this state, as the Civil War ruined the economy, and with their sole dependence on agriculture, South Carolina was one of the 2 or 3 poorest states for the next 100 years. The earthquake's concussion was felt for hundreds and hundreds of miles, to the north as far away as Boston, to the northwest in Chicago and Milwaukee, as far as New Orleans to the west, Cuba to the south, and as far away as Bermuda to the east. Now, I found this funny. It was so severe that outside the immediate area, check this out, a rumor spread that Florida had physically broken away from North America. Now, I'd like to say that this had everything to do with the fact that it was 1886 and there was no modern media, but let's be honest, today's modern media would absolutely have heard this speculation and immediately ran the story on all platforms. Welcome to year 2 of this podcast. Right now, you're listening to the full version of today's story on your favorite podcast provider, but there's also the daily podcast video short. They're shot right here in my podcast recording studio, so you get that perspective, but oftentimes they will include visuals from that day's event from when it happened in weather history. So after listening to the full story, go check out the podcast video short on television or online anytime at theweathernetwork.com/weather history. Considering the vastness of the effects, it was Charleston, South Carolina that took the biggest hit from the quake, which is believed to have had a magnitude of about 7.6. Buildings crumbled. It is estimated that 14,000 chimneys fell from the shake. It caused multiple fires while rupturing water lines and wells. It is estimated that the total damage was in excess of $5.5 million 1886 USD, which translates loosely to about $112 million in today's monetary exchange. Railroad tracks were twisted like pretzels, shooting off in all directions. And this is where things get unique to the topography of this southeast Atlantic coastal region. Acres of land were liquefied. The formation of sand craterlets and the ejection of sand were widespread in the epicentral area. In a few locations, water from the craterlets sprouted like geysers to magnificent heights of 4.5 to 6 meters. Then, fissures that measured up to 1 meter wide stretched a path parallel to the canal and stream banks in the surrounding area. Now, if we wish to go back as far as pre-Diluvian times and beyond, it is a heavily studied and theorized example of an interplate earthquake that is believed to have occurred on faults that formed during the breakup of ancient Pangaea, the one continent from which all landmass on Earth took shape from upon millennia of movement. South Carolina is not an isolated case, however. Modern science and detection methods have uncovered similar concealed faults along the east coastal plains of North America in Virginia, along with the Carolinas. Knowing this today is why interplate research continues, because no one wants a repeat without warning of the 1886 Charleston, South Carolina earthquake that happened on this day in weather history. Hey, do you like the podcast? We'd love to hear from you. If you have an idea, go right now to wherever you're listening to me and rate us if you would, please. It's on a 5-star system, and we would love as many stars as you can afford. So rate us, but then also review us. This way we can always stay on top of how you'd like to see the show evolve. Then remember to subscribe to this podcast. Click the subscribe or follow button right there on the very same podcast homepage you're listening on. You'll be immediately reminded that the next day is ready to listen to, and you also have access to every episode in the archives. It dates back to June 1st of 2020, so there is a lot that we got to get caught up on this day in weather history. Thank you, August. You have been a wildly exciting and educational month, but we must push on. Tomorrow is September 1st, when Hurricane Dorian demolished the Bahamas and prompted an issued state of emergency in a lot of places, including where we leave you today, the coast of Virginia and the Carolinas. We'll talk about it all tomorrow, September 1st, on This Day in Weather History, with me, your host, Chris May.